time.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I thought of when you were just speaking there was you mentioned you were speaking to his teammates from the 1986 World Cup, and I've in the days after his death, I remember reading a lot of people talking about why he was sort of so loved by his teammates, was that, you know, he wouldn't throw his hands up in the air and look very frustrated, and they compared this to sort of other superstar players who would get frustrated with their teammates and not being at the same level. Is this sense sort of something that you've heard from them as well, that even though he was at another level, he was still able to sort of mesh and compartmentalize the talents of his teammates?
Yes. I think particularly in the 1986 World Cup, but practically everybody who's ever worked with him in football says that. You know, he was a hard worker, and he was very much not someone to put his hands up and say, "Oh, that was your fault." I mean, these guys revere him, and they constantly say he was one of us, but then they relay a kind of daily life that shows he was absolutely not one of them. And completely his own rules and own thing going on. But he was definitely a good member of the team. He was a teammate, and he was very loyal to them and to other players. You know, he wasn't I mean, I don't want to say he wasn't a prima donna, because in a way he was the prima donna par excellence, but he loved football, and that's real and that's genuine. And I think he made a real effort to train and play and run for the ball and partake with his teammates. I mean, it's quite lovely narrative working out in terms of how, although Bilardo had said before the World Cup, this will be Maradona plus 10, and that's the only certainty about this group, that they all worked in a system where, you know, they could get the best of Maradona, but then each had a really important function to fulfill and a role. But he was participative in allowing to happen, you know, I think. But I don't think he would have become such an adored and revered player if he hadn't been able to work in a team, because football is a team game. You don't, you know, I mean, we were talking about Cortázar a little earlier, who really didn't like football because he didn't feel it had the drama of solo sports. He thought tennis and boxing, where it's kind of one man duels with another, or woman, and if we bringing it to up to date times. But team spur, whereas football really needs a team. You can't have, you know, you can have a great player alone, but ultimately that's just not what moves us about the game. The game works as an emotional inspiration if you have a good team doing something collectively, even if they're not very good, but you still need to know where they are in relation to each other, what the spaces are, what's happening on the whole pitch. Maradona was the best at that, as well as the best with the ball. So he could dribble and head and do all his little kicky tricks and whatever, but he was an incredibly intelligent reader of the entire pitch, and he knew what was going on, and he was able to aid everyone for the best result possible. And you can see it match by match in 1986, how they all start to learn better how to function. So for sure, I think that was absolutely his, you know, the thing that made him amazing while he was a player. But he hasn't been playing football for a very long time, and he still remained amazing. So, you know, we need to kind of keep looking at what was going on with this guy, because 1986 was a very long time ago.
Yeah,